Now if we want to take a look at the comments for a given story, if we click on our comments link, we're taken to an error page. We're given a 404 because we haven't created the story page, and we want to fetch the data for a story with the given ID attached to the ID query param. So let's add a new page to our pages folder called story. So initially story will look very similar to index. So class story will extend react.component. I just want to return a div now with the text story, and then we'll export default story. Okay, so now we see our story text, and let's make a request for a given story based on the ID from the ID query param that's coming in. So we'll add our get initial props, and this will be a static method. From the context, we want to add our request, response, and then query, because we need that ID query param. So we'll say const story ID equals query.id. Then we want to make a request for the given story based on that ID. So at the top, we'll bring in fetch from isomorphic fetch, and then we'll make this an async function. We'll await fetch, and then pass in the endpoint https node-hnapi.herokuapp.com/item, and make sure we use template literals, and then interpolate story ID. So this will come back as our response. Then we'll parse the JSON and make a variable for story that we'll save it in, and then we need to return story. However, to add some error handling with a try catch, we'll modify this a bit. We can move the story ID as well as the response into the try part, but we need to take the story variable and declare it as let, and then reassign it, or assign the value to the JSON data that we get back for the story. And then if there's an error, we'll catch it and log it, and we'll set story to null if there's a problem in getting the data. Then at the top, we can import our error page from next/error, and in our render, if we're getting an error in fetching the data, if there's no story, and we'll grab story from the props object, if there's no story, there's an error in getting the data, again, return a 503 status code. Then as for the main content, instead of returning a div, we want to return everything within our layout component. So we'll grab layout from our components folder. And remember that we can pass in a title. So to the title prop of layout, we can grab the given story's title from story.title, and we don't necessarily need a description. Then we'll include a set of main tags, then an h1 for the story title with a set of a tags in it. So the link will direct to the story's URL. The text will be the story's title. Then we'll have a div with the class story details. And we'll have a number of strong tags here. The first will include the story's points, the text points, then the story's comments count, and then when this story was published, how many hours ago or days ago. Then we'll save this and check it out. So we're putting the stored data in the page. We're able to fetch it successfully, but we need to style it a bit. So we'll add a class name to the h1 as story title. Then we can start adding our styles. We'll start with the main div, or the main tags. We'll add some padding to the story title. We'll set the font size to 1.5. Actually, let's do 1.2 rems. Margin of 0. Font weight 300. Padding bottom 0.5 ems. The link within the title will have the color hex code of 333. Text decoration none. Then on hover, once again, we'll set text decoration to underline. Then for the story details div, set font size to 0.8 rems. Padding bottom will be 1 Border bottom 1 pixel solid RGBA 0.1. Margin bottom 1 For all of the strong tags in story details, set margin right to 1 to space them out a bit, and then the A tag set to our safety orange again. So that looks much better. We don't have the comments yet. We'll be displaying it underneath the title and all of this meta information. We'll take care of that in the next section.